the second hour of the Mike Miller Show on Truth Be Told Media. It is Monday, and regular listeners know that means it is also the Michael Hausum Hour. Michael, how are you today, my brother from a different mother?
Well, hi, Mike. Good afternoon, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Like I said off air, man, this is just a great news day, you know. And let me give you just a little backdrop. I was not here Thursday and Friday. My daughter was supposed to have her son Thursday. That did not happen. She was induced Friday morning. Everything went swimmingly. They came home yesterday. Mom, baby, dad, big sister, everybody doing well. So exciting times. But I was.
Wait a second. So is this your first grandkid?
No, this is my second one. His big sister, Adelie, is 3, and thrilled to death to be a big sister, have a little brother. So exciting stuff.
Oh my gosh! Congratulations, man! That is so exciting.
Thank you. And I need not say I'm an extremely young grandfather. Probably.
I was going to say you probably had your first kid when you were like 6 or something, then, right?
And then my daughter, same thing. So, but anyway. I tell you what, like when she was pregnant with Adelie, again, who is now 3, grandparents told me multiple times that you're going to like the, it's great having kids, but being a grandparent is the best thing there is. And now, again, maybe we rationalize that because we're getting old and, we're closer to the end of the deal than the beginning. I'm being semi-facetious or not. Right. But it's very cool. It's very cool. Because the only thing I can liken it to, it's like you like dogs, but you'd rather visit them at someone else's house until you don't want to mess with them anymore, and then you get to go home where there's no dog. I mean, and that's probably not a good analogy, but
right. Yeah, I've watched that with both sets of my kids' grandparents. That there's tons of spoiling going on. There's wonderful fun, an almost complete lack of any kind of responsibility and discipline, and then here you go, take them back. It's perfect. Michael.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
You there?
Did you hear all that? Yeah, it went totally silent. I don't know if you heard that.
Okay, that was on me.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling Jessica that was on me.
Okay, gotcha.
Anyway, okay.
So we should. Have you talked about the World Cup at all today, Mike?
You know what? I have not, and strangely, I found myself. I have for the week, kind of getting into it a little bit, and I am not a soccer, i.e., football fan. But what's your take on it?
Well, it's funny. I grew up playing soccer, big time in Southern California, and but by the time I finished up 8th grade, I got bored. So for me, the World Cup and professional soccer or anything like that, to me, is such a total snooze fest. I really like Dennis Miller's description of it.
What he said?
He was explaining why World Cup soccer is so incredibly popular in, Ghana and Burkina Faso and Equatorial Guinea and Trinidad, Tobago, places like that.
Right.
And his assertion is that most of those countries in the world, those people, the residents of those particular cultures, spend their entire life hoping and waiting for something to happen, and it almost never does. So the something almost happening, which is, 88 out of 90 minutes in a soccer match, is literally how they live their lives. But almost nothing ever happens. So they can get incredibly excited about the idea of a potential occurrence, and that carries them through their entire lifetime. And so soccer is, their entire culture and life writ unto nationalism and a 90-minute period.
I like that. And I think that is an aspect for those types of countries. On the other hand, I mean, and these people will just be added to the devotees. Would be, you have the smug Brits, you have the smug most of Europe, who, when asked about why it's not a popular sport here, suggest that Americans are far less sophisticated than they are and do not understand the nuances of the game. And so, you have that crowd too. But anyway.
Right. Well, to me, I watched yesterday's game, and I got to say, when the USA scored that second goal, man, I stood up off my couch and cheered, and that was exciting. On the other hand, it's like, I think I posted on my Facebook site, a woman wrote a justification for being excited about the United States prospects in the World Cup.
Right.
Because it's an opportunity for America to actually beat the world at something that most Americans don't even care about. And there's a delicious irony in that.
That's a good point. I found myself, I watched probably the last 30 minutes of the game with Ghana. Okay. And that header, or whatever, I think it's called a header, right? By the 22-year-old guy. I found myself jumping up and down and being excited about that. So I don't know. Right. Maybe, if we got to the point where we actually were really competitive, really had a shot against the Brazils and the like, maybe so. But I still, I go back to that. I mean, it's been a struggle in this country for decades, trying to get soccer ingrained in kids. I mean, way before the whole Beckham thing, however many millions they paid him, tens of millions, I suspect. Remember the thought that, well, if we just get them started when they're, in the womb, or whatever. Right. I mean, it's 6 years old or whatever. But what's really happened is they grow up and they get bored with it for, I think, the very reasons you and I are kind of alluding to.
Sure. I remember growing up in San Diego. San Diego had a pro team, San Diego Sockers, and we used to go watch all the time. And I had a poster. The New York Cosmos had Pelé playing on their team in the 70s.
Right.
And I was totally into the idea of the NASL, North American Soccer League, becoming a big professional thing, and the whole deal just kind of fizzled.
Yeah. I grew up a Chicago Blackhawks fan. Grew up on the south side. This is during the Bobby Hall days, Stan Mikita, people who no one else would, outside of that area and that era, would remember. But there are a couple of obvious, in my mind, I'd like your take on this because I think we're both sports fans, but the two things that I think are just frustrating as hell to me about it. One, we've already alluded to, scoring happens very infrequently, and maybe this is just me being a baseball guy, control freak or whatever. The fact that you don't really control the ball or the puck in hockey nearly to the degree that you do in any other sport. It's just too frenetic. I wouldn't be able to play either sport. I'd lose. No wonder there's so many fights in hockey. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't have that much control.
Right. Well, the interesting parallel between soccer and hockey, there was another, I pulled it off of somebody else's wall, posted it on my Facebook wall. It's a meme, and there's, on the left is a guy lying on the ground, obviously a World Cup soccer player, and he's going through one of these, like somebody had just removed his heart with their fist, and it says soccer, fake injuries. And then the next one is a picture of a guy on a hockey rink, and he's got this massive gash on his face.
I saw that.
And his blood is coming down, and it says hockey, deny that they're hurt, or fakes that they're hurt, denies that they're hurt, or plays while hurt, or something like that.
And of course, that is the awesome part about hockey. That's probably the most awesome part in my mind, is unlike football, baseball, what have you, lots of times, man, the officials just let them have at it in hockey until they, I guess, get out of their system, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's I mean, the aggressiveness is part of the deal. Whereas in soccer, I don't know. I mean, it was fun to watch America almost win yesterday. But, you know, I've got friends that have watched every single match and are totally into it. I'm like, you have got to be. I'd seriously rather sit and watch dust collect on my wall.
Me too. I almost think that I think almost that the announcers or the whole I don't know, the sporting world, the writers and so forth that love, support, defend hockey. I think they often try to make what is extremely boring stuff to most of us here appear to be very calculated and thoughtful and ingenious. You know, some of the plays that didn't work, or this guy should have been here or should have been there or whatever. But anyway, you know, I guess they still got a shot, right, to get into the whatever the next group is. But I don't know. Anyway, what a phenomenon. Listen, I want to ask you about something else before we get into stuff you and I talking about. But this whole Hillary thing, and this is when I blew it a few minutes back and forgot to turn my mute switch off. Jessica gonna show up at my house and I don't know, super glue this thing open. But at any rate, this thing with Hillary. And her dead broke, and now her latest comment. I mean, it's as if she purposely is trying to sabotage herself. I mean, how politically tone deaf can someone who supposedly, according to Pelosi and husband Bubba, the most qualified person in the history of the modern world to run for the presidency, how can somebody be that tone deaf and politically stupid to keep saying that stuff?
You know, I have absolutely no idea. I've got an article pulled up that I'm going to see if anybody else has hit when we're done here. And her comment about running for president is, "It's my turn. I deserve it."
Did she say that?
Yeah, and I need to figure out what the context is.
I've not seen that. That would be awesome, brother.
The question was, Ms. Clinton, some have suggested that you aren't healthy enough or you're too old to pursue the presidency. Do you have a comment on that? She turned around and said, "It's my turn. I've done my time and I deserve it." And then she stormed off.
Oh, my gosh. You put that up.
One of her handlers came up to me, told me he would need a recording of her interview, and it was now an off-the-record comment.
Wow. And of course she believes that, and that's why I did a I don't know if you this Klein this book Blood Feud that's out.
Right, Ezra Klein, right?
Yeah, and now it's not Ed. This is like Edward, and I know it's close to Ezra, but anyway, this guy he's the same guy.
Yes, right.
Yeah, he's a guy who wrote the thing about Obama a few years ago, but. I've talked on the show quite a bit. I maybe even written about it, but how the Clintons and Obamas loathe each other. And of course, this gets back to exactly what you're talking about, which is the first shoe that dropped in this blood feud, if you will, was Obama having the audacity to challenge Hillary in 2008. I mean, Hillary was the preordained candidate. I mean, you know, to hear the Democrats talk before Obama burst onto the scene, they might as well not even hold a primary. I mean, just anoint Hillary. It's a done deal. Well, then, of course, Obama shows up. And then even worse, the liberal media carries his water, gets all over Hillary. And if you recall, that primary season, 2008, it was middle, maybe two-thirds of the way through. Whatever Bubba Clinton was doing in South Carolina, the Team Obama accused him of racism. So these two families don't like each other. But anyway, Klein's got this book out, and it's this behind-the-scenes stuff where this is really probably not going to be she's not going to be ordained again. Of course, you got the left, too. I mean, you got the Elizabeth Warren crowd, the whatever she is, 164th Indian. So I don't know, man. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for Hillary this time either, whether she thinks it's her turn or not.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm looking as we're sitting here talking. I just pulled up a couple of articles about it. Yeah, and you're right. By the way, Edward Klein. It seems to imply that Obama's considering not endorsing her.
Right.
Well, and at this point, I can totally see that. As
I said the same thing in the first hour. Yeah, you can't do that now.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of you wouldn't expect the president, the head, the leader of the Democratic Party to come out until they have a single candidate, of course.
In the clip, in the link you're looking at, is there the clip where Bill Clinton saying how he hates Barack Obama? I hate him more than anyone that's ever lived.
No, you're kidding. They actually have him. They actually have audio or video of that?
No, they don't. And Bill Clinton's way too smart for audio or video that to exist. But this is one of these books, and we've seen them in different genres. Republican, Democrat, as it relates to politics. But just like there's stuff in the book, I talked about some excerpts in the first hour where there will be conversations recalled on the golf course, and of course, they quote unnamed other people in the foursome. So that's more what it's about. It's the same. It's the same link, at least that I referred to when I did the first hour discussion about it, where Hillary and Valerie Jarrett would sit down with a bottle of wine on a regular basis in the White House, and they would talk about people who they most hate is probably too strong of a word, although not very much. But out of those conversations about Hillary came, and others have called her this, but apparently Mooch herself, according to Klein, nicknamed Hillary Hildebeest. So it's just not a good scenario going on there. So
right.
Anyway, all right. So what's on your brain today? We talked quite a bit. Of course, like you and I always say, we could pick the first 3 or 4 links on Drudge and do a telethon on those. But
right.
You've got some Hillary stuff.
One thing that does come up, I didn't send you the link on it because it was a couple days ago, but I think I tagged you when I put it up initially because I know that you're super interested in California politics.
Oh, I am.
Especially California gubernatorial or the gubernatorial.
Yeah, gubernatorial. I mean, I'm looking forward to your 2018, right? George Clooney.
Right. So maybe I didn't send you that link, but that to me is interesting, especially, I don't know what the breakdown for our listenership is, but there's probably a lot of people I'm thinking across the Midwest and anywhere but here in California that don't understand how it would be that Californians would be interested in a guy like George Clooney.
Fair assumption. Because we think he's a lunatic,
Right.
Well, not a lunatic, but I mean, yeah.
Well, he's an actor,
Right.
Previous actors, Reagan obviously being an actor, and then a governor, but he had a lot of political involvement in the acting world before running for governor.
Exactly.
So in this piece, and this is really for the benefit of the listenership that is not in California, there are actually 6 really good reasons why Californians are excited about a George Clooney potential run after Jerry Brown wins the next time around. In fact, I think I said it, the tagline on the article was Californians are so incredibly excited about a George Clooney run that we're spilling our quinoa and kale smoothies all over our Prius upholstery.
There you go. See, this is why I love you, Housem.
Okay, so let me we just touch on this real quick. Now, understand that the qualifications that are important for Californians may not necessarily apply or mean anything elsewhere in the country in terms of justifiable reasons to have George Clooney be our next governor, okay?
Right.
Number 1, he has great name recognition.
Got to give him that.
Number 2, he's great looking.
That too.
His girlfriends are always great looking.
That they are. And he actually has one now who's substantive, but good point again, 3-0.
Right. Number 4, he stars with great-looking actresses in his movies.
Right.
Number 5, he makes a great amount of money.
Yeah.
And number 6, he's a great progressive liberal.
That's probably, that's the icing on the cake. I do get California because all of that stuff makes sense to me because it's counterintuitive to most of the rest of the country. But exactly that's and what do you think? I think the guy probably ended up getting elected, or it'd be a damn close race.
Well, the one thing for me that kind of jumps out is in that list of 6. There's no business or political experience at all of any kind.
Right.
But of course, I got to remind myself, whoa, we're talking about California politics here. Business or political experience obviously wouldn't matter at all. I think that if George Clooney wants to run for governor of California, the only question in my mind will be how much above 60% of the vote will he get?
There you go. And of course, it's hilarious, because of course this goes back decades now. But when Ronald Reagan was elected president, he was lambasted by the left as a B movie actor who had no qualifications or ability politically. But as you correctly pointed out, this guy was everything from, I think maybe Screen Actors Guild or at least some similar organization. Ronald Reagan was very involved in politics, not to mention that, 16 years before he was elected, he was very involved in the Republican Party politically. And partially as governor of California. So, comparing him or comparing Clooney to him, yet you hear crickets from the left about his qualifications. That's just what you get with these people.
Right. In fact, I was on a radio show on Friday and got into an argument with the guy about Reagan, who, he followed Jerry Brown's daddy, Edmund Brown, as governor. He 2 terms as governor. And the list of successful financial accomplishments, massive changes that he made in the state of California were significant.
Yes. And,
no question about it.
We won't go to a different topic here because we're a couple minutes away from the news. But Ronald Reagan, I think much to the dismay of the left, try as they might, to continue to, he was a B actor. He was senile. Nancy ran him, all the stuff we've heard. Ronald Reagan has been in, I don't know, maybe the last 10 years at least, rehabilitated well beyond what these people ever hoped would happen in history, hasn't he?
Yeah. No question. No question.
And you see the same thing, by the way, happening with George Bush. Did you see there's a poll? I almost posted it this morning, but George Bush now 6 points over Barack Obama in personal favorability. Who knew?
Yeah, that's stunning because we're only 5 or 6 years away from. When he left, things were not good, man.
No.
So I saw the results of that the poll information. It was just like. I think what that is, quite frankly, is the response of everything was Bush's fault. But you look into it, things for the 8 years that he was president, things were, in many ways not near as bad as they still are today. I think that may be part of it.
Absolutely not. And of course, the precursor to this poll, and the poll Michael and I are talking about, was Gallup poll this morning. The precursor that I will always remember. Those billboards that popped up beginning, 3-4 years ago, 2-3 years ago, Miss Me Yet with W's picture, right?
Right.
So
I think another aspect, it'd be interesting, part of what's killing Obama right now is nobody trusts a word he has to say.
Oh, no, and won't. Listen, we got 15 seconds, thereabouts, and they won't, to Michael's point, because he just continues to lie.
And that may be a big difference between he and Bush in terms of people's recollection of perceptions.
I think you're right. Listen, we'll be back after the news. Michael Hausen. Okay, back with Michael Hausen. Michael, I want to talk to you about this whole Lois Lerner thing with the emails and now being obviously lost, and now word comes today that the regime canceled the contract with this company that backed them up. But before we do that, you wrote an interesting piece, which I read everything you write, by the way, normally, but I did not read this. And I think I saw a link earlier and didn't hit on that either. But this post you wrote, this new scientific report, and your headline was, according to a new scientific report, reading this article is not due to your free will. What's that all about?
Oh, very, very interesting. In fact, let me pull that thing up. It was, I saw it on Drudge. It was a headline over the weekend. In fact, Limbaugh even talked about this thing on his show today. And what it was a group of scientists, I believe it was at UC Davis, and they're doing a study on brain activity and decision making. And what they're asserting is that there is evidence that there's brain activity that occurs when somebody makes a choice, a decision on something. There's brain activity that occurs prior to the person being aware of their making a choice.
Okay.
And that scientific analysis of that brain activity, they can figure out what the person is going to decide before the person themselves is even aware of it.
Wow.
The implication being that if physical activity is predictive of a decision before the person is aware of them making a decision,
right,
that they're actually not making a free will decision on their own. That's the implication of the study.
So they, in other words, could be manipulated or I don't want to say programmed, or let's say encouraged to make a decision that might not necessarily be a decision that they would have made otherwise.
Well, that's it. But it was interesting. The original article, it was in the United Kingdom's Independent. The article itself was just scientific in terms of just saying that, hey, you know what? We figured out that we can analyze brain activity and we can figure out what somebody's going to do before they themselves are aware of it.
Right.
Therefore,
but our job is to
will.
Find out how that could be manipulated politically. That's what we do.
Well, that's exactly. All of the comments, of which there were hundreds and hundreds of comments after that, was all about the political applications of that. If people actually are not making free choices, and they're not choosing their own paths and the things that they themselves want, then there is justification for central planners to decide for folks, because people aren't actually deciding themselves what they want.
You know, it's hilarious, and chillingly hilarious. I suppose that's oxymoronic. But, I mean, you think back to, and for those of you not old enough to remember, well, I mean, I watch the reruns too. But you think back to some of the old, like, Twilight Zone episodes, you know, or you think about, of course, Orwell's 1984. I mean, this is that kind of stuff, isn't it, when it applies to what we're talking about?
Right. Oh, exactly. Yeah, the thing is kind of, you know, I have I left school early with enough credits to get my econ degree, but I was really close to having a philosophy as a second major. So the idea of free will and whether, you know, how the brain interacts with your decision making and all of that's a very interesting topic to me. The thing that particularly bothered me about this article is the scientists kind of reveal their agenda when they're talking about physical manifestations in the brain activity itself. That's a scientific discussion. But then when they jump to conscious discussion or will discussion, they're leaving science and they're jumping into philosophy.
And politics in a lot of cases, aren't they?
And politics, that's right. Because just because the person, when they come to a point of making a decision, whether in this case it was just a simple decision that could be, monitored in a scientific study, but other decisions about, deciding what's best for you and your family, for your food or your taxes or whatever other kinds of free individual liberty things that are important to us. Every single thing that has happened to you up to that point in your life inform whatever decision that you're going to come to.
Sure.
And and you may not be aware that you're going to choose a Chipotle burrito for lunch as opposed to a quarter pounder at McDonald's. But all the things that have happened into your life impact you right up before that decision's made. And it's impossible for a scientist to discount all of that without having a political agenda involved, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's no scientific endeavor any more obvious to most of us where political opinion and bent shows up than global warming. Climate change, or as an advisor to the White House wants to call it, climate disruption now because it sounds worse. But I was looking at that on Drudge this morning, and of course I've railed. It's a favorite topic of ours on IJR. It does well, as Michael knows. Mm-hmm. I have pretty much memorized most of the recent studies over the last several years, including the latest one last fall by the UN. And most everything I read, and I believe objectively, liberals would discount that, but flies in the face of the hysteria. And I was just reading on Drudge this morning. Maybe you saw the link as well. Now they're saying, and we won't get into the details in terms of how actual temperatures replaced by computer models, but now what we thought was that the planet hasn't warmed for, 17 years and 8 months. This goes back to the 30s, with the 30s being the warmest decade in at least recorded history over the last century. So there's nothing more political in science than global warming. And let me just throw one more short comment in there. I think, Michael, when you and I were growing up, and maybe we were just young and naive, but I'm going to assume you felt the same way. To me, science was science. It stood alone. It was separate from politics. It was not based on a political agenda. And that's not true anymore.
Right. It is totally not true. The science was an effort to understand the world around us, free of pre-existing notions or free of assumptions that were not based on reality. It's science as a way to test and explain what's actually going on. However, now it's part of a game. I mean, I'm sure you remember the Ice Age was coming. Back when I was a kid, that was the big scare, that the Ice Age was coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, Time magazine.
Dennis Miller talks about it. In fact, if you look at his when he does his video cast, up on the wall of his office, he has the cover of a Time magazine from the mid-'70s warning about the coming Ice Age.
Right.
And I remember going all up and down the state of California, going to the state parks. My parents they have a little program called Junior Rangers, where you'd go to one of the state parks around California, and you could, there was a class that you would take as a kid and learn about the park and something, and you'd get these little stickers and, get all this stuff. Anyway, I remember several times a big deal was the presentations about the expanding snowcap in the Sierras, the expanding snowcap in the Arctic, that the new ice age was coming. And even then, there was suggestions that it was man-caused and that there needed to be political responses to the coming ice age. 40 years later, obviously that's flipped upside down.
What's hilarious, too, about that whole situation is when you see, which happens, and let me preface this with the disclaimer that I always throw out on the show. The climate cycles. It has forever, and it always will. But you have some receding snowpacks. above the Arctic Circle, Europe, and under those snowpacks are villages. So unless one were to believe that some previous civilization burrowed through the ice packs and were able to build villages under the snow, it would suggest that snow didn't used to be there. I mean, Michael, I live in an area, by the way, Indianapolis. If you go from Indianapolis to Chicago, it's completely flat and boring. It's all cornfields.
Right.
The glaciers stopped a little south of Indianapolis. So if you get down into Brown County, southern Indiana, you have a whole lot of, terrain and different elevations and stuff. And you just ask one of these people. Okay, George Bush wasn't even alive when the glaciers.
How in the hell did W have anything to do with? That's very funny. Ronald Reagan wasn't alive when that happened.
I mean,
Barry Goldwater wasn't alive.
None of them.
Adam Smith wasn't even involved in.
Not even close. And of course, I've used the same line as it relates to one of the things that historically the warmists, if you will, have completely ignored, along with other scientific data that flies in the face of their nonsense, is when global warming in different periods can be measured effectively, has been measured effectively, happening on other planets. And of course, that suggests solar activity, which they always ignore. And of course, George Bush and the folks we just mentioned didn't visit those other planets and cross. So
I think that is the funniest thing I have heard all week, man. Wait a second. George Bush wasn't president when that happened. How can it possibly have occurred?
No, and to my knowledge, I mean, he never even visited any of those places. So, I mean, you've just got the nonsense going on. But, I mean, again, the larger point, which was a great post by you on IJR, that this thing about free will and the fact that scientists are so much now, maybe not across the board, but certainly in the areas we talked about, political. And that's a dangerous thing, I think. Anyway,
yeah, because it escapes one of the fundamental tenets of science, which is let the facts and reality dictate what it dictates without any sort of pre-existing assumptions or agendas.
And it should be. I mean, that if nothing else, it should be the core tenet of science, and scientists should take pride in that. So, I mean, again, what are we seeing? Anyway, I want to get to the we got to get to the Lois Lerner situation with the emails. You wrote about it yesterday, I believe. Right. And why don't you, because it was your post, I loved it. I wrote, unbeknownst when I wrote it, although we ended up dovetailing nicely, I wrote about the development today that we learned about from the Daily Caller. It's probably out there other places now. But give the listeners a little bit of background about the supposedly lost Lois Lerner emails for 2 years and this company and what was involved and what was going on with those guys.
Well, it was interesting. A little bit of background on it. My NSA guy this morning, the NSA guy that monitors everything that I do,
right?
He sent me the region that I've been assigned to because we're doing a bit of a house-to-house, computer-to-computer search for her emails, and it took me like 3 hours this morning to cover all the ground where I'm supposed to go house to house.
Well,
but from 2005 to 2010, a private company called Sonasoft, which is a Bay Area, California technology company. They were hired by the IRS to do email backup on their servers. And their core business is Outlook file archiving as a way to essentially to back up backups. And that's what these guys have done. So for 5 years, they were contracted to the IRS. And then as you point out, during 2010, the contract was canceled. And this was during the time that Lois Lerner had sent out her emails. Apparently, and then the story kind of continues with what you came up with. But I even put up a tweet from October of 2009 that this company, they tweeted their relationship with the IRS as part of their marketing campaign.
And read that, because it's perfect.
Oh, it's awesome. If the IRS uses Sonasoft products to back up their servers, why wouldn't you choose them to protect your servers?
I mean, maybe I say it too much on the show, but you can't make this up. And they were using those types of quotes in their ad campaigns and stuff,
right?
In their promotion.
Interestingly, if you and I have a link on my story, I'm not sure if you do as well, but if you go to Sonasoft's website, there's a little drop-down menu where you can look at past customers, and there's pages of past customers, and there's a whole little section on government. Oddly enough, the U.S. Treasury and the IRS is not listed as a past customer.
Shocking. No, I did not have that link, but you did notice on my post how I prominently linked to you by name. Did you not?
I did, and that was awesome, and I appreciated it, man.
I'm not saying it for that reason. I felt bad because I was asked to write the story this morning about the cancellation of the contract. I got started, dude. I even had the link in there for the I did the image of the tweet, and then I felt, damn, I'm stepping on Housem here, and I don't really want to do that. And so anyway, I thought they dovetailed nicely. So the $64,000 question to me, I mean, there's a couple of them. If you're to believe Sonasoft, which I think most of us would pick over believing Lois Lerner and the IRS at this point. What happened to those backed up emails? Because as we both said, that contract was in existence for that 2-year period when her emails now are supposedly lost. So what happened to those? That's my first question. If they backed them up, what happened to them?
It can't be that they don't exist anywhere. I mean, the one thing that you've heard for 15, 20 years is once something is out in the electronic world, it is out there forever.
It's there.
So you've got the computers for the people that receive the emails. You've got the whatever the network was that was hosting those emails. Then you've got whatever company that network used to back it up. And then you've got whatever company that backup company used to back up on the receiving end, and then on the sending end as well, and then on whatever network providers where the emails themselves were trafficked,
right.
the roadway, so to speak. So not only is the sender have a backup and then a subsequent backup for that, which is the Sonasoft, then you've got the actual highway that it traveled on, those folks have backups, and then on the receiving end. I mean, so of all of those backups and the backups of the backups and the backups of the backups of the backups, they just don't exist.
And this is why this thing continues to be a scandal. And I sometimes refer to what Michael just said as this is incremental lying. First, they say that Lois Lerner's hard drive crashed. Then when people bring up the fact that, well, yeah, but then you have your tape backups or your servers, you being the IRS, then they said every 6 months, those are dumped, which to me makes no sense. Now we have the truth coming out that this company had this contract with the IRS and was backing up, bragging about it. As Michael read the tweet, using it as an ad to suggest, hey, if the IRS trusts us to back their stuff up, why wouldn't you? This is just preposterous. It's just preposterous. So the second question,
can you imagine that you're sitting there in the conference room and a company comes in to present why they should be selected. And they say, well, one of the things that we do is we take all of your company backups all of your emails, and we will do your archive storage, and we do it on one little Commodore 64 tower computer over in the corner. And in our experience, we don't really need to do it, and that's the way we do it for you.
It's just not believable. It's just not believable.
No, the question, well, what happens if that computer crashes? We don't believe that it will, so we take no additional effort to, back up or support or guarantee your material. We don't do that.
And of course, I don't believe. No, I did not. I did not include this piece in my post. I don't think you did either. But this is not like Larry's email backup service. I mean, this company worked.
No,
this company worked with Microsoft and others. So this was not like the new kid on the block thinking it just might be able to use that Commodore 64 and back up emails with a wing and a prayer, was it?
No, their entire business is essentially guaranteeing that we'll be able to get your stuff, period. Right?
It's just, again, it defies logic. So again, my second question then is, why do you think, at this point we're speculating, but why did the IRS cancel its contract with the company within weeks of her supposed lost emails? Coincidence? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, see, the issue of the lost emails, what's that been? Just the last few months that's even been a thing? Right. So either there's some sort of conspiracy going on that, oh my God, we sent these things out. We got to go back and cover our tracks. That might be part of it. The other thing that came to mind, I did a little bit of research, and this is part of my article, about the board of directors and who the people are involved in this. One of the people on the board was very involved in Bay Area Democratic politics.
Okay.
So I wonder, and because my assumption is anytime there's a government involvement or a government program, that there's some sort of cronyist relationship. I refuse to believe that most government contracts are merely as the result of the best service provider at the best price. I assume that there's something political going on beyond.
Yeah, and half the time they're closed bid contracts.
Exactly. And those aren't accidental relationships, right?
Right.
So without knowing anything, my assumption is political. Whether it's political specifically involved in this IRS Tea Party conservative thing, or just general political in terms of relationship between the company and the government or whatever crony relationships existed. I'm assuming that the contract was canceled for something along those lines, not something specifically to do with performance.
Oh, absolutely. But then again, it goes back to let's assume that that the company's Sonasoft's was subpoenaed for their servers. Right. Clearly the contract was in force from January 2009 to April 2011. And again, this was the period, folks, when these pretend to be missing emails from Lois Lerner disappeared, were erased, her hard drive crashed, and then the IRS says that it erased their tape backups after 6 months. If everything we read about this is true, and as I said, I'd much rather be inclined to believe Sonasoft than I would Lois Lerner and the IRS and the regime, I would think that stuff's not going to be hard to get a hold of via subpoena or whatever, regardless of the cancellation of the contract. What am I missing?
No, you're absolutely not. The thing that immediately comes to mind there is, what if you told the IRS that you didn't keep your receipts for 5 years? The standard that they apply to us as taxpayers for maintaining information. You know what? I had copies of all of those receipts on my computer drive, but it crashed. I'm sorry, guys. they're not going to accept that. That's for
Who
damn
wrote that?
sure.
Did somebody on IJR write that post about all the excuses you could give the IRS, like the dog ate my receipts and all that kind of stuff? Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that, which I thought was genius.
Yeah.
And it's only genius because it's so incredibly true. Your friendly IRS revenue agent sits across the desk from you and you shrug and say, "Oh, my computer crashed. I'm sorry, pal."
And isn't it interesting with the IRS, you're guilty until proven innocent. But in this case, it's the other way around. Hey, listen, we got a couple of minutes. Dinesh D'Souza, love that guy. He not included in the New York Times bestseller list, is he?
Yeah, how accidental is that? They had it shows on a couple of lists that's selling well, but they put together this top 25 fiction hardcovers list, and D'Souza's book is not on it, although he would, based upon the sales numbers, he would be at number 12.
Right.
So how in the world, if you're advertising a list that's the top 25 best-selling fiction hardcovers, the number 12 book is not on that list? So you're establishing a sales list based upon something other than sales?
Who knew? I mean, then, of course, my favorite story here is about the New York Times bestseller list. Hillary's book, we got less than 30 seconds, but Hillary's book now dropped out of the top 10 already. What a shocker, huh?
Well, they're going to come up with some sort of list, somehow, some way, to get her name on the top.
And Hillary will be number one. Listen, Michael Hausman, as usual, thank you, brother. I will talk to you next week.